Kyaso Uti Parya Vatistate. And this translation of the verse is, for one thus satisfied in Krishna consciousness, the threefold miseries of material existence exist no longer. In such satisfied consciousness, one's intelligence is soon well established. When it says threefold miseries, miseries of this body, miseries caused by other bodies, and miseries caused by natural cataclysmic events. Okay, so for one thus satisfied in Krishna consciousness, the threefold miseries of material existence exist and no longer. In such satisfied consciousness, one's intelligence is soon well established. Okay, there's no purport to this verse, so we'll go to the next verse. In other words, this verse is saying, when you're satisfied in Krishna consciousness, the miseries of life no longer exist. And with such satisfied consciousness, one's intelligence is soon well established. Okay, it's a very nice verse. There's no purport, so we'll go to the next verse. Nasti buddhir ayuktasya nachayuktasya bhavana nachabhaviyatak santir santasya kutastukam. It's a famous verse. This is chapter 2, text 66. And this well-known verse says, one who is not connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness can have neither a transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there's no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace? It's a very nice verse. Nasti buddhira yuktasya nacha yuktasya bhavana nacha bhavya taksantira santasya kutasukam. One who is not connected with the Supreme and Krishna consciousness, in other words, one who's not connected to Krishna, can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there's no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace? Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And Prabhupada writes, unless one is in Krishna consciousness, there is no possibility of peace. So it is confirmed in the 5th chapter, 5.29, that when one understands that Krishna is the only enjoyer of all the good results of sacrifice and penance, that he is the proprietor of all universal manifestations, and that he is the real friend of all living entities, then only can one have real peace. Therefore, if one is not in Krishna consciousness, there cannot be a final goal to mind. Disturbance is due to want of an ultimate goal. When one is certain that Krishna is the enjoyer, proprietor, and friend of everyone and everything, then one can, with a steady mind, bring about peace. Therefore, one who is engaged without a relationship with Krishna is certainly always in distress. And is without peace. However much he may make a show of peace and spiritual advancement in life. Krishna consciousness is a self-manifested peaceful condition which can be achieved only in relationship with Krishna. Okay, so also this in this purport it refers to another verse, Bhaktaram Yagitapasam Sarvalokam Maheshwaram Suridam Sarvabhutaram Kyatva Mam Santin Richati. It's the 5th chapter, 29th verse. A person in full consciousness of me, meaning Krishna, knowing me, or Krishna, to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material existence. And in the purport, it says, the conditioned souls within the clutches of illusory energy are all anxious to attain peace in the material world. But they do not know the formula for peace, which is explained in this part of the Bhagavad Gita. The greatest peace formula is simply this: Lord Krishna is the beneficiary in all human activities. Men should offer everything to the transcendental service of the Lord because he is the proprietor of all planets and the demigods thereon. No one is greater than he. He is greater than the greatest of the demigods, Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. In the Vedas, Svatasvatara Upanishad 6.7, the Supreme Lord is described as Tam Ishwaranam Paramam Maheshwaram. Under the spell of illusion, living entities are trying to be lords of all they survey, but actually they are dominated by the material energy of the Lord. The Lord is the master of material nature, and the conditioned souls are under the stringent rules of material nature. Unless one understands these bare facts, it is not possible to achieve peace in the world, either individually or collectively. This is the sense of Krishna consciousness. Lord Krishna is the supreme predominator, and all living entities, including the great demigods, are his subordinates. One can attain perfect peace only in complete Krishna consciousness. This fifth chapter is a practical explanation of Krishna consciousness, generally known as Karma Yoga. The question of mental speculation as to how Karma Yoga can give liberation is answered here. To work in Krishna consciousness is to work with the complete knowledge of the Lord as the predominator. Such work is not different from transcendental knowledge. Direct Krishna consciousness is Bhakti Yoga, and Jnana Yoga is the path leading to Bhakti Yoga. Krishna consciousness means to work in full knowledge of one's relationship with the Supreme Absolute and the perfection of one's relationship with the Supreme Absolute. And the perfection of this consciousness is full knowledge of Krishna, or the Supreme Personality of God. A pure soul is the eternal servant of God as his fragmental part and parcel. He comes into contact with Maya, illusion, due to the desire to lord it over Maya. And that is the cause of his many sufferings. As long as he is in contact with matter, he has to execute work in terms of material necessities. Krishna consciousness, however, brings one into spiritual life even while one is within the jurisdiction of matter. For it is an arousing of spiritual existence by practice in the material world. The more one is advanced, the more he is freed from the clutches of matter. The Lord is not partial toward anyone. Everything depends on one's practical performance of duties in Krishna consciousness, which helps one control the senses in every respect and conquer the influence of desire and anger. And one who stands fast in Krishna consciousness, controlling the above mentioned passions, remains factually in the transcendental stage, or Brahma Nirvana. The Eightfold Yoga mysticism is automatically practiced in Krishna consciousness because the ultimate purpose is served. There is a gradual process of elevation in the practice of yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. But these only preface perfection by devotional service, which alone can award peace to the human being. It is the highest perfection of life. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 5th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of karma yoga, or action in Krishna consciousness. So, although we're on verse 66 of the 2nd chapter, we went to also, let's say, a kindred verse, which is Bhagavad Gita, 5th chapter, 29th verse. Okay, so let's go back to, okay, I'm sorry. Let's go back to verse 66. Nasti buddhir ayuktasya cha nacha yuktasya bhavana nacha bhavya taksantira santasya kutaskam. One who is not connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there's no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace? So this verse explains how we can attain peace. Now, everyone, in order to be happy, they have to have peace. You can't be happy unless there's peace. If there's peace, then it means no guns being shot and no people fighting and so forth. So, therefore, but if a person is not connected with Krishna in Krishna consciousness, they cannot have transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind. And without transcendental intelligence and without a steady mind, there's no possibility of peace. So, how do you get transcendental intelligence? Well, you should hear Bhagavad Gita spoken by devotees every day, and Srimad Bhagavatam every day. Then you'll have peace of the mind. And then how do you get a steady mind? Well, it's being regulated in your activities. That means that you're regulated. Spiritual life is a life of regulation. Waking up early, going to sleep early, waking up early, chanting your rounds, bathing regularly, at least twice a day, and all these things that you have to do based on the principle of regulation. Without regulation, it's very difficult to have peace of mind. But when you have these regulated activities at different times of the day, and your day is like organized, you're able to chant your rounds, get them finished. You're able to, eat at the same time every day. You're able to read Shastra and read out loud the Shastra, explain the Shastra. All these things should be regulated. Then you get a great feeling of peace because you're able to think of Krishna 24 hours a day. And say, so there, this verse says, Nasti buddhir ayuktasya. It means there cannot be transcendental intelligence of one who is not connected with Krishna consciousness. And if one is devoid of Krishna consciousness, one cannot have a fixed mind and happiness. And if one is not with a fixed mind and in happiness, one cannot have peace. And without peace, there's no question of happiness. Okay, so one who is not connected with the supreme, I'm sorry, for one thus satisfied in Krishna consciousness, the threefold measures of material existence exist no longer. In such satisfied consciousness, one intelligence is soon well established. Okay. And then the next verse says, one who is not connected with the supreme in Krishna consciousness can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there's no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace? A very important verse. And it gives us this verse gives us the possibility to have peace. And how is that? Well, if one is not in Krishna consciousness, there's no possibility of peace. So, in order to have the possibility of peace, you have to be in Krishna consciousness. And what is Krishna consciousness? It's thinking of Krishna all day long, all night long. And that's why this verse in the fifth chapter is also connected to this verse uh, in the second chapter, 66th verse, where it says, Bhuktaram yagitapasam sarvalokam maheshwaram suridam sarvabhutanam gyattvamam santimbrichyati. A person in full consciousness of me, meaning Krishna, knowing me, meaning Krishna, to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets, demigods, and a benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. So this verse, fifth chapter, 29th verse, is the peace formula for the living entity. So what is the formula? One, you have to understand that Lord Krishna is the beneficiary of all human activities. In other words, whatever you do, it should be done in such a way as you can offer the result to Krishna. That's point one. And then point two, everything you do should be based on transcendental service of Lord Krishna, because he's the proprietor of all planets and the demigods thereon, and of the demigods. No one is greater than Krishna. He is greater than the greatest of the demigods, Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. Now that's very important, because some people say, no, God is Lord Shiva. A lot of people say that. And they worship Lord Shiva as the supreme personality of Godhead. But here it's very clearly saying that Krishna is greater than the greatest of the demigods, meaning Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. Now, the question is, who should we believe? Because there are a large number of people in India that worship Lord Shiva and think that he's the supreme personality of Godhead. Well, we should not be, let's say, we should not be illusioned by that. They just don't have enough information. However, if you understand what Lord Shiva says, he says that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. And he is always thinking of Krishna. So if that's what Lord Shiva says, now who should we believe? We should believe what Lord Shiva says, that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. Okay, now you can ask the question, well, where does Shiva say that? Okay, well, where does he say it? Let's take a look. He, one sec. 552. Just hold on a second. 552. There is a mission, and this is the chapter 10, and the last verse is verse 42, in which it says, there is a mission that regularly propounds that worship of any demigod will lead one to the supreme personality of Godhead or the supreme goal. But worship of demigods is thoroughly discouraged herein, because even the greatest demigods like Brahma, Shiva, represent only part of the opulence of the Supreme Lord. He is the origin of everyone born, and no one is greater than him, meaning Krishna. He is Asamodva, which means no one is superior to him and that no one is equal to him. In the Padma Purana, it is said that one who considers the Supreme Lord Krishna in the same category with the demigods, be they even Brahma or Shiva, becomes at once an atheist. If, however, one thoroughly studies the different descriptions of the opulences and expansions of Krishna's energy, then one can understand without any doubt the position of Lord Shri Krishna and can fix his mind in the worship of Krishna without deviation. The Lord is all pervading by the expansion of his partial representation, the supersoul. So and so who enters into everything that is. In other words, the Lord is all pervading by the expansion of his partial representation, the supersoul, who enters into everything that is. Pure devotees, therefore, concentrate their minds on Krishna consciousness in full devotional service. Therefore, they are always situated in the transcendental position. Devotional service and worship of Krishna are very clearly indicated in this chapter in verses 8 through 11. This is chapter 10. That is the way of pure devotional service. How one can attain the highest devotional perfection of association with the Supreme Personality Godhead has been thoroughly explained in this chapter, chapter 10 of the Bhagavad Gita. Srila Baladev Vidyabhusana, a great acharya and disciplic successor from Krishna, concludes his commentary on this chapter by saying, Yat Shakti Lesat Suryadya Bhavanti Ati Ugra Tejasa Yad Amsena Dritam Visvam Sa Krishna Dasame Richyate. From Lord Krishna's potent energy, even the powerful sun gets its power. And by Krishna's partial expansion, the whole world is maintained. Therefore, Lord Krishna or Sri Krishna is worshipable. Okay. The key point made in this 10th chapter and the last verse, where is it? Verse 42, is that by worship of demigods, but worship of demigods is thoroughly discouraged herein, because even the greatest demigods like Brahma and Shiva represent only part of the opulence of the Supreme Lord. He, meaning the Supreme Lord, is the origin of everyone born, and no one is greater than him. He is Asamordva, which means that no one is superior to him and that no one is equal to him. All right, well, this is what we should understand about Krishna and about Lord Shiva. Therefore, if we go back to the 5th chapter, where is it? 5th chapter, last verse. Again, it says, Bhoktanam yagatapasam, sarvalokam maheshwaram, suridam sarvabhutanam, kyattvamam, santem richati. A person in full consciousness of me, meaning Krishna, knowing Krishna to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. So this is a good explanation of who Krishna is. He's the supreme lord of all planets and demigods. And that includes Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, all, all, all planets and all demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities. Well, yeah, if you understand that Krishna is your well-wisher and your real benefactor. He's the one that's supplying everything you need for life. Then one can attain peace by knowing this from the pangs of material miseries. Yeah, because if you have full faith in Krishna and you engage wholeheartedly in Krishna consciousness, guess what? Krishna is going to protect you. If Krishna protects you, no one can hurt you in any way. So therefore, we're trying to learn as much as we can about who Krishna is and what his uh, immeasurable powers and immeasurable qualities are. Obviously, we cannot understand everything about Krishna because they are infinite. But should try and understand as much as we can. And demigods like Brahma or Shiva are servants of the Lord. There's nothing to be embarrassed about by being a servant of the Lord. It makes one very, very, let's say, exceptional. That's why it says here, in the Padma Purana, it is said that one who considers the Supreme Lord Krishna in the same category with demigods, be they even Brahma or Shiva, becomes at once an atheist. So the worshippers of Lord Shiva, there are very few worshippers of Lord Brahma. However, there are many, many worshippers of Lord Shiva. They're mostly atheists. If, however, one thoroughly studies the different descriptions of the opulences and expansions of Krishna's energy, and that's what we're doing by reading Bhagavad Gita, we're trying to understand the opulences and expansions of Krishna's energy, then one can understand without any doubt the position of Lord Shri Krishna and can fix his mind on the worship of Krishna without deviation. And there it is. This is our takeaway for today. The Lord is all-pervading by the expansion of his partial representation, the supersoul, who enters into everything that is. Pure devotees, therefore, concentrate their minds in Krishna consciousness in full devotional service. Therefore, they are always situated in the transcendental position. Devotional service and worship of Krishna are very clearly indicated in this chapter in verses 8 through 11. Let's take a look at that, 8 through 11. Through this chapter, 8 through 11. So, oh yeah. Text number 8 in chapter 10 says, Aham sarva shiprabhava matak sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddhabhava samanvitaha. This is one of the, it's the first of the nutshell verses of Bhagavad Gita. There are 4 nutshell verses of the Bhagavad Gita. They're in chapter 10, verses 8 to 11. And number 8 says, I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Okay, that means that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everyone is subordinate to him. Everything emanates from me. He's the source of everything. That means he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. So this is the first verse of the 4 nutshell verses that are the most important verses of the Bhagavad Gita. Then text 9 says, Matchita matgata pranak bhavyantas parasparam katyantas chamam nityam nitusyanti cha ramantisa cha. So this is the second verse of the 4 nutshell verses of the entire Bhagavad Gita, which says, the thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me, and their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. And then the third nutshell verse of the Bhagavad Gita, which is chapter 10, verse 10, Tesam satatayuktanam prajatam pratipurvakam dadami buddhiyogam tvam yenamam upayanti te. These are the most important verses of the Bhagavad Gita. To those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. And then the last of the 4 nutshell verses of Bhagavad Gita is Tesam ivanakam partam aham agyana jam tama nasyami atmabhavasto jnana dipena basvato. To show them special mercy, I, dwelling in their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. So if you know these 4 verses, these are the 4 nutshell verses in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, verses 8 to 11. You know everything. These verses and their purports are most important because they explain without any doubt who the Supreme Personality of Godhead is, Lord Krishna. And then the next 2 verses, 12 and 13, are extremely important also. So, therefore, if you want to do some homework, you read the 4 nutshell verses, that is 10, 8 to 10, 11. And also, and that means you're going to read these verses and then read the purports of these verses. These are the 10, these are the nutshell verses of the Bhagavatam. That means the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, verse 8, 9, 10, and 11. These are the most important verses. So it's very good to read these the purport to these verses. Okay, so we'll stop right there. Are there any questions anyone would like to ask? So you have some homework now. You want to read chapter 10, verses 8 to 11, and you should, what are you going to say here? Okay, you should write a little summary of these verses and what you think about them, especially verse number 10. Verse number 10 is very, very important. Okay, so are there any questions? Now you have homework. It's chapter 10, verse 8 to 11. And then you have to read that, and then read those 4 verses, and then focus primarily on text 10 of the 10th chapter. It's very, very important. And if you understand that verse, he will make a lot of spiritual advancement. That verse and that the purport of 10:10 and the verse 10:10 of Bhagavad Gita. Okay, you got homework for tomorrow. Are there any questions you would like to ask? Anyone would like to ask a question? No questions? Or are there questions? Of course, when there are no questions, there's not going to be any answers. All right. Well, you have homework. I hope there's somebody listening. And thank you very much. And we'll stop right there. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Chant Hare Krishna and be happy. Hare Bol.